Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode about the movies with William Fletcher. As per usual, I am your host, William Fletcher, and this week I am once again joined by Hannah for another episode this week.
Hello.
Hmm. So, I think I mentioned the last time you were here that you sent me a list of films that you hadn't seen that you would be,
Yes, the
uh,
list was extensive. I'll give it that. It was
mm,
long.
yeah, of what to cover for the podcast.
Mhm.
And there were some that I had already seen, and there were a few that I hadn't seen, and so that's what we're going to be talking about this week, is Black Swan, which is very interesting. I think we can both agree on that. That's a very interesting
Yes,
film. Mm,
I was planning to watch it like just before I went to bed one night, and now after
mm.
watching it, I realized that that would have been a very stupid idea
Yeah, yeah, very much so.
because it's heavy. There's a lot
Yeah.
happening.
Mm. So, did you know? Because I knew the basic plot that it's about ballet and there's these two girls who are sort of who are going against each other to become the best ballet dancer.
Yeah, I knew there was a ballet related plot. I didn't know the like the full ins and outs of the plot,
Hmm.
but I knew bits
Yeah.
and pieces.
Hmm. Yeah. And I did know there was a twist to the ending. I forgot what the twist was before, because I had heard the twist somewhere and I'd forgotten what it was. So as I was watching it, trying to see if I would remember it or not, and I didn't get it. I thought before the end that the Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis character were the same person, and I thought that was what the big
I
twist
mean,
was.
throughout the movie, it does kind of almost paint it that way
Yeah.
in some parts.
Mm. Yeah. It's yeah, and I mean that's not the ending, but I'm sure we'll get to
No.
that at some point.
Yeah, see, I didn't know about the twist ending. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
like, it kind of, like, well, when you get to the end of it, if you watch the whole thing, it
Hmm.
makes sense. So it's
Yeah.
not like a wild plot twist like
Hmm.
Fight Club was, going
Yeah.
back to the last episode I was in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, the ending, it was a twist, but it made sense.
Yeah. And
Like, it was building up to that almost.
yeah, because that's sort of a problem that some films can have where they have a twist ending, but the twist doesn't make sense, and it's just sort of having one for the sake of having one that there needs to be set
Just
up and payoff to it.
every M. Night Shyamalan film ever.
Nah, I'd argue some of those have set up to the twist. I mean, not all of them do, of course, but I think some of them have a setup to them, or at least in some way or another.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mm. So, do you have a specific place that you want to start with the film that
Um,
you like to talk about?
well, well, why not start at the beginning? It's a good place to start.
Yeah, sure. I guess we could just go through just sort of the plot as it goes along. So
Yeah.
I made the first note I made was I felt the some of the introductory dialogue felt a little bit off. I don't because it was a little while. I watched this about a week or two ago, so I don't have a distinct memory of what was said at the beginning. But you watched it a lot more recently than I did. So do
I
you
watched
remember?
this yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. So do you have do you remember what
I
exactly they say, or a general idea of what is said?
not particularly, nothing really stood out.
Mm.
The most thing I remember is the first sequence, like the first, I think it's one variation of Swan Lake, Black Swan, it's
Yeah,
Swan Lake Ballet.
yeah.
It's one variation of that, and I thought it was very well
Mm.
shot, well directed.
Mm-hmm.
You could
Yeah.
see like the fear in her face, which
Mm-hmm.
very much applies to later in the story.
Yeah.
But I thought that was very well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I
But none of
felt.
the dialogue stands out as anything
Yeah.
crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh. Yeah. I'm trying to think, and I can't really recall what the beginning is. What is said at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, I don't really remember
Mm,
actually either what was said.
yeah.
I don't think it really stood out too much, but it was a lot of like building who this person is and that
Mm,
she's a dancer and there's these roles coming up, that sort of thing. So it wasn't
yeah.
anything
It's.
striking, but it
Mm-hmm.
set the scene.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what most movies should do. Is very
Yes.
early on established the premise and what and the story and how it's and what it's going to be about and what's going to
Yeah.
happen and everything.
Because I've seen some movies that try and either they spend too long fleshing out the characters and then I just get
Mm-hmm.
bored,
Yeah.
or they don't flesh them out at all.
Yeah.
You're just like, why should I care about you? Why?
Yeah. That's a very good point. That it needs to strike the right balance because it could spend too much time on characters and then you just don't like because you could spend too much time on the characters and then the plot is very weak and it's good characters but there's nothing like you know
Nothing that makes you care about those said good characters.
yeah or there's no plot for you to get invested in because you're
Yeah.
yeah
You're
and
like,
there's
I like
the
these people, but they don't do anything.
yeah and I mean it goes the opposite way. You spend too little on establishing it and setting up characters and then there's just nothing.
Mm.
Mm. So very early on there's lots of imagery of mirrors and mirroring,
Yeah,
which
now that I think about it, yeah.
is a very strong part of the film. I think in almost not every in pretty much almost every scene, or at least most of them, there is a mirror or like of some sort. It's not always like in there and like in a focal part of the scene, but there's always a mirror of some sort in a scene.
That
But
is true, now that I think about it. And
yeah,
also having mirrors, like if you're in a dance studio, there is a lot of mirrors
mm,
around, so
yeah,
that kind of adds that back into the plot
yeah.
as well.
I
So it
think
relates to the dancer plot, but also
mm,
mental health as a hot mess plot.
yeah, yeah. I think the only time I read a thing, I think that the only time we don't see any mirrors is the final performance of the
Yeah,
film, and I think that's the only time we don't see a mirror of some sort. I think every other time there is a mirror, and I mean we'll get more into mirrors and how they are used and such, but most of the time there is a mirror of some sort. It's not always important to the scene, but there is a mirror.
yeah.
So,
Now that I think about it, I didn't even think about that until
mm,
you brought it up.
yeah. Well, because I figured from I knew sort of kind of some things that happened, but I was very much I just noticed that there's lots of mirrors, and it makes sense, for a ballet studio there would be a lot of mirrors
And
because
it also adds the whole because ballet and the world of dances, it's all
mm-hmm,
very self, like the way you look is a
mm-hmm,
very big thing. The way,
yeah,
like if your foot's pointed slightly wrong, it's a whole big deal.
yeah, yeah,
So the whole mirrors thing also ties into that, the whole like self, like,
mm-hmm,
because she's a perfectionist, so it's
yeah,
all
mm-hmm,
mirrors constantly looking at for perfection, all that
mm-hmm,
kind of thing.
yeah. So after we get we're introduced to our main character, played by Natalie Portman.
Yes,
And this performance won her the Oscar that year for Best Actress.
I hope so. It was a fantastic performance.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she did. She was
I
very.
also I also read somewhere that at least Natalie Portman, possibly some of the other actresses,
Mm.
took about 6 months worth of ballet lessons to film the movie. Like 6 months
Yeah,
before they started shooting, they took like 5 day a week ballet classes
yeah.
or
Yeah, I
something like
read a
that.
thing that I just read about Natalie Portman, but I assume a lot of them took like a long time. They did a lot of ballet lessons for a long time, so they would get like it would be pretty accurate to the film. And I think that's good commitment to the role to be willing to
Yeah. Obviously, all the
better.
stuff on the point shoes, so the parts where they're like up on their toes and things, they'd get professional dancers to do that because you
Ah,
can't just learn that within 6 months.
yeah,
God, oh, that'd be a whole thing. So,
yeah,
but all like the shots of probably from her like face up and doing the basic stuff on the point
hmm,
shoes would be her.
yeah,
But like any like all the spins and stuff on her toes, that would have to be professional
yeah,
dancers, surely.
yeah. It makes sense that like because there's only so much you can do in that period of time that you can't just suddenly become a master and do everything. You
You
gotta,
can't just be like, oh, you've done like 3 months of ballet. Here, have some
yeah,
point shoes. Have fun.
yeah,
No, it
mm,
doesn't quite work like that way.
mm, yeah. It's I don't know how like what actual ballet dancers think of the the movements and how they do it all, but I think this seems like a film where they would really try to do it as best they could and look as accurate to actual ballet dancers as they could.
Yeah, I think from because I've done a little bit of ballet in my lifetime, not a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
a little bit.
Yeah.
And from what I could see, it all looked pretty legit. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a professional dancer.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess since we're talking about Natalie Portman, I think sort of across the board the performances are all pretty decent. At least they're not like not all of
Like,
them are.
none of them stood out as terrible.
Yeah, but I don't think many of them stood out as especially great either. Besides Natalie Portman, and I would also say Mila Kunis was pretty good in it too.
Yeah,
But
I thought she
beyond
was
that,
good.
I thought everything else was very like it worked, and they did what and they did what they had to. But besides that, it wasn't anything.
There was also, I think the character's name was Beth, played by Winona Ryder.
Oh yeah,
Her performance was also really good, but we
mm,
all know Winona Ryder can do crazy people. I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
something she's good at.
yeah,
But that was also a well done performance.
mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm,
there's one scene in there where I had to sit and like wince
mm,
because it's quite later in the movie, so I won't talk about it now.
yeah,
But I was sitting there with my hands in front of my eyes, just like, is it
mm,
over?
yeah,
Yep, it's over. Cool.
mm,
So,
yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about, and we will get to it because it's very an interesting scene.
yeah.
The so the ballet teacher, the I
Oh
forgot
my gosh. Oh, I don't remember his name, but oh,
that was I was as I was watching this, I was like, oh, this is gonna be. It says Tomas, that's his name. As I was watching this, I was like, oh, this is gonna be something that we probably will want to skirt around as best we can because
yeah.
it's
From like the first minute he appeared on screen, I went, I don't like you.
yeah.
You're like one
He
of those
he
shady, like
he very like
second,
instantly puts off like
a rapey vibe,
yeah creep vibes, and it's just like
great vibe. Yep,
he's gonna do something, and I don't know what. So I'm just gonna not talk about it because that's a bit
that's
much.
fair.
But
That's been heavy for this podcast.
yeah, but if you've seen them, like I presume if you're listening to this, you've probably seen it. You know, I would think know what we're talking about, and it was very just like out of nowhere, and I didn't
It was out of
expect it.
nowhere and quite disturbing
Yeah, so let's
because
just
in
yeah,
the whole entertainment world
mm,
before the Me Too movement,
yeah,
luckily that has happened. That wasn't unfortunately uncommon.
yeah.
It was
This
quite
was
commonplace.
because this came out before I think this came out what
Yes,
2010. So
2010. Yeah,
yeah, the Me Too movement was a little bit after a
wasn't
few.
happened then. So,
Yeah.
but now because of that, a lot less of this is in place, and that is
Mm,
amazing.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, moving on to some lighter topics,
Yeah.
maybe.
So hey, a note I made was there's a bit where we see Nina is doing. I assume it's a pirouette. I don't know, but she's doing this thing, and then she like cracks
I'd say
something.
was she spinning?
Yeah, she's like spinning on like one
Yes,
foot
that
in
would be a
this.
pirouette.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then she like cracks something in her foot,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, that. Like I'm usually fine. Well, I guess it depends with violence. Like sometimes, like if I know it's obviously like fake, like it's overly cartoony, I usually will be fine. But like more realistic stuff like this is like a bit can be a bit much. Like it depends what it is, of course, but it can be a
Yeah.
bit like that's not sure how I feel about that.
Mm. It's kind of just like, oh, that would hurt a
Yeah,
lot. And
but
she just gets up and keeps going. I'm like, what are you doing?
yeah, and from the way it's like framed and from the way it's shot, I thought she like twisted her ankle or something, but no, she's like cracked like her toe is like screwed up, and I was like, oh, that's not good either. It's,
No.
that's really bad, and it
Yeah,
doesn't
because I
look
know of
good either.
a few dancers who've had
Mm.
different injuries to ankles and toes and whatnot, and
Yeah,
it puts them out for ages. So
yeah,
I'm like, what are you doing? Stop. Don't
yeah,
keep going on your like almost broken toe.
yeah. This film is
Stop.
very much. Have you seen the movie Whiplash at all?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so that is a film like well, because it's about drumming, so it's not the same thing. But the films sort of are the same in that it's like these people who want to be like the best at the thing they want to do, and they sort of sacrifice all this and they go through all this just to be considered the best. Like they're the same movie, but like one's about drumming and one's about ballet, and it's not that cut and dry. It's like, oh, it's not just this. You just changed whatever they're doing and the gender
It's
of
a
the
similar
character.
premise, but
But it's
not
a
identical movies.
similar premise. Yeah, like it's like if you sort of remove a lot of stuff from it, it's the same premise. Just this person wants to become like the greatest ever at this thing, and they go through all the sacrifice and pain and torment just to be considered the best. And I think it's a very interesting comparison, and it fit like it works and it makes sense as a comparison because it's the same story, just different characters and different
Yeah.
uh, goals they're chasing.
Yeah.
That was just something I sort of noticed, and I had seen a video like which was an analysis about the two and comparing them, and stuff that differentiates between the two and how they are also similar in ways as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of movies like that that are
Yeah,
like the base idea is quite similar, but
yeah, but it
then they change a few other things.
yeah, it's like a same premise, but beyond that, you know, and it's very like basic. It's not like it's the same thing either. Usually, it's like they want to achieve this same thing, but it's slightly different with what they want to achieve. Like it's the same thing, but there's something different about it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to skip over some notes because there's some notes about some uncomfortable stuff that happens.
It's
Then
fair. I think I've made a few notes about that too in case we were bringing that up,
yeah,
but
I
if
I
we're not doing that,
basically
we're not doing that.
I basically just put down that he is just forcing himself onto her. Basically, it's
Yeah.
pretty much what it is. I'm like, this I and it's weird because of his justification of he's trying to help her do better. I'm like, I don't know if he is though, because he
It's like,
says he
are you
is,
though?
but you're being a like. If I wanted someone to get better, I wouldn't do that because that is a crime, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's very, very weird. And it's inexplicable too. I made a note that it was very inexplicably, like, just this happened. Because I didn't expect it to happen. I knew
No.
there was a scene involving Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis together, shall we say, later
Yes.
on. But besides that, I didn't know any of the other sort of similar undertones
Yeah.
in the
No, neither did
story.
I, because I'm watching this movie just in my lounge room at home,
Yeah,
and my boyfriend's looked over and he's like, "What are you watching?"
yeah,
I'm like, "Black Swan, why?" He's like, "Honestly, I thought it was softcore porn."
yeah. It
And I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I made sure I was like I'm not going to watch cuz even though I didn't know that I was like this is a film that I can't watch with my family cuz they are not going to like it and it's not
Yeah,
going
I
to
can't
go
imagine
well.
watching this movie with my mother. Oh gosh.
Oh no, I was like no, I know some really dark stuff's going to happen and my mom's not going to like it. So I'm just gonna do this in my room
So
alone.
if you still live at home, guys, it's definitely a headphones on your laptop in your bedroom kind of movie.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Unless you want to have some weird discussions with your family members.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was just very like, yeah, it just happened. I was like, this is a bit. Is this necessary? I did think like, is this necessary for the story? I know that like it's justified that he's trying to make her better, but I'm like, surely he could do it another way, right? Like,
Half of those scenes probably aren't justified. Let's be
like
real.
to go back to the Whiplash comparison, there's bits where the teacher's trying to make the main guy get better, but he doesn't just start like assaulting him. I mean, in that way, he's different, but it seems justified because like he's just trying to get this guy to go better at what he's doing, but it's like in a realistic way and in a way that like this.
It doesn't involve anyone getting sexually assaulted at the end of the day.
Yes, it's pretty much what it boils down to. And I think that sort of soured me a little bit on the film. That I felt it was I thought it was unnecessary. I was like, do we need to do this? Like, I don't think we need this. There's other ways you can show this and tell this story without having this. You can have him, like it's not that the plot point could say the same, that he wants to help her get better, and he's a bit forceful in his ways, but like there's other ways you can do that. You don't have to have him doing that.
Or there's one scene of when he gives her an assignment, that's all I'll say,
Oh
where I'm like, that
yeah,
wasn't necessary. That
that
was too much.
really was it. And it's such a weird scene too. I think this film
Yeah.
is it's good. I will say it's quite good. But there's just a few scenes where I'm like, I don't think you need that. And maybe like if when I rewatch this in the future, I might be like, it might click better then. But now I'm just like, at this point, I'm like, we don't need that. We don't need you to be,
I,
doing
I mean,
this
if I
to get the
was
point.
like a dancer or whatever, and you're, dancing and they say that's your homework assignment, I'd be like, excuse me?
Yeah,
And then probably report you to some sort of authority.
yeah. But I will say, now I'm thinking about it, I understand why she doesn't do anything against it, because she wants to be the because she can play the white swan, but she can't play the black swan, and that's sort of the
Yes.
driving force for her. Really, she wants to get better, and so with this, I can understand why she doesn't have a problem with it or report him to any authorities, because she's like, he's gonna tell me to do this so I can, you know, get better and get this part. But it's like it's still a bit weird because this is set very much in like a realistic world. Like
Yes.
it's not like it's got like a little bit of like anything to it. It's like these are just like real people in the real world. And it's just like if this happened in real life, he would be fired. He
He
would
would not only be fired, he would be arrested.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just really weird. And that soured me on the film
It did,
a little
that did
bit.
rub me the wrong way whenever for that guy was in a scene. I just went,
Yeah.
oh no, God,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
not you.
Yeah, it just felt like I don't know. I don't want to say that like well because I don't know who this I don't remember the name of the screenwriter, and I'm sure they probably aren't putting it in there just for the sake. I mean, they could just be putting it in there because they want to, but I would like to assume that they are putting it in there for like a purpose and there's a reason that this is happening, and that like in their mind, I'm sure there's probably a reason it's happening. It just feels very out of place, and it's just a bit like, ooh, I don't know
It's a
about
lot.
that. It is a lot, and that is a warning. That is like, if you're listening to this without having seen it, I do say like, prepare yourself. There's quite a bit. It's very dark, and like,
It is heavy. Don't
mm,
watch it before you go to bed. I'll say that much.
yeah. This is definitely something that's actually a really good segue to like there's some really like good scary like jump scares in this, and I wasn't expecting that. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of scary. I like that. That's good. This is like I wasn't really expecting it. I was expecting it to be like a dark film, but I wasn't it to have like some scary moments, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But no,
It,
I just speaking of scenes that feel out of place, I
mm,
just quickly looked up Darren Aronofsky, who's the director of the film,
yeah.
and he also directed Requiem for a Dream,
Oh, it's a great movie.
which
I
has
do need to
a
rewatch it, but it's
which I looked into that quickly, and it said that one also has controversial sex scenes in it. So I'm like, yep,
oh
that makes
yeah,
more sense.
yeah, absolutely. There's the
He's
scene at
made
the
that
very
his thing,
end.
but it's like, okay,
Yeah, there
don't
is a
make
scene
that
at the
your
very
thing.
end of that film like in the context of that film, it makes sense and you can understand it. And to be fair, to a degree, I can understand to sort of bring them together. I can understand why these scenes are in there,
Yep.
but it just doesn't work for me. I understand the point. Well, for some of them, I can understand the point, and I can somewhat understand why that's there. And then other times, I'm just like, you didn't need that. That was not necessary for this. Like sometimes I get it, and sometimes I don't. It depends, really.
Some of them I'm like, I get this scene in here, but it doesn't have to be that graphic.
Oh yeah, it's
Tone it
very
down a little bit.
uncomfortably graphic. Like
Yeah,
it's
especially considering I was at home watching it, just like, yep,
yeah,
it's middle of the day on the weekend, and I'm watching practically softcore porn.
yeah. It's like
Great.
it's like yeah, it's very like just yeah, it's very graphic, and the scene in Requiem for a Dream is a lot worse than this. Like than anything you've seen here,
I,
it is a lot worse. But
I've never
like
seen Requiem for a Dream,
no,
so I can't comment on
yeah,
that.
but I think because it's a film I've watched once because it left such an impact on me, and this is kind of the same in that it's a film that I probably won't watch too often in my life. Like this, I've got some films, so I'm just like, I don't know how often I'm gonna watch that because like it leaves an impact on you.
It's the kind of movie you can't just sit and watch like chilling on a Sunday afternoon, which is
Yeah,
what I do when I watch
you
like
can't just
Moana because I love
yeah,
kids movies.
yeah, exactly.
I could do this with that with Black Swan,
Yeah, you can't just be like,
but
"Oh, I'm
no.
gonna watch this today." You need to like sort of prepare, especially if you've seen it already. Like if you go in not knowing anything, it's you could probably just do that because you don't know what to expect. You could just be like just chilling and it's like, "Oh, watch this. I've heard it's good." But then like when you go to rewatch, you'll be like, "I don't think I can't." You can't just
Oh,
put it on.
it's
There's movies that you can just be like,
a
"I'll just
little
watch that
heavy.
today."
It's a
Yeah,
bit like I don't know if you've seen it, the TV show The Handmaid's Tale.
I've heard of it.
It's a similar sort of thing. It's
Yeah,
very heavy,
yeah,
very
yeah.
intense,
Mhm,
graphic,
mhm.
horrendous subject matter.
Yeah,
You got to put yourself in the mood to watch it. I'm like, no,
yeah,
I need to be in the headspace to watch
yeah.
this, or I'm not going to be okay.
Yeah, and I think like that like this, you know, this is some really good. There's some really good stuff that is sort of like this. You know, you can't just pop it on. You need to, you know, you sort of get ready for this. You know, whether it's a TV show or a movie. But I think there are times if it's not done well enough, it can sort of put you off, I guess, and then leave a sour taste
It's
afterwards
just
because
doing it
it's
for the
just
sake of it. It's not for
yeah.
any
If
reason.
it's to like it depends of course if what you're doing is serves the plot or not. Like it's very
Yeah.
arguable in a lot of cases like is that necessary or not? But like and you know, some of the stuff is I can understand it and it sort of has to propel the plot and then some of it I'm just like I don't think you need to do that though. Like the scene with
And it's like, was that necessary? I don't think so.
yeah, like the scene with Mila Kunis and Natalie Portman. Like, I I can see it and I understand why it's there, but it does feel like it goes on a bit too
Well,
long.
at least about 2 minutes longer than it should have, and
Yeah.
it could have been toned down just a little bit.
Mm. Like, I get it and I understand how it's you know sort of progressing Natalie Portman's character, but it also does feel like I don't. We don't need to see all this. Like it doesn't need to go on for as long as it does because it's just like, ugh, you know, it's just
You just get a
interesting.
little uncomfortable after a while. You're just like, okay,
Yeah,
hmm,
yeah,
now's probably the time where I go get snacks.
yeah, exactly. Because you just don't.
It
Yeah,
just goes on.
after a while, it just gets like, oh, you're just like, okay, just we get it. Can you just finish? And then you're just like, And then eventually, when it does finish, you're like, oh, thank goodness it's done.
It's like,
But
oh,
you,
we're done here. Move on.
but other than yeah, like it's very much like you know,
And speaking of that scene and all those scenes, there was,
yeah.
I think it was the first sort of scene, like her mum was like in the room, which was
Oh,
really
and
weird.
she's
The
doing
whole
the homework
abusive,
assignment. Yeah, yeah.
like, yeah,
Again,
the
that
abusive mother dynamic.
yeah.
Oh,
There's a lot
no.
of like abusive. There's a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
abuse in this film, just from everyone. Like these people are
I feel
really,
bad for Natalie Portman's character. I'm like,
yeah,
your life is pretty shit.
yeah. It is just like, man, you, man, this is a bad lifestyle that you're living like this.
Just be like, get out of that house,
Yeah,
um, first and foremost,
mm,
because
yeah,
yeah, her mum's always there and yeah, she's always there.
yeah. It's
If
very
that was
much,
my mum, I'd be like, okay, that's it, I'm leaving.
yeah,
I'm not.
yeah. It's, oh, sorry, yeah. It's there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that whole
some.
the whole mum dynamic also made me quite uncomfortable
Mm,
throughout the movie,
uh,
which I
uh,
get why it was necessary because it does explain a lot about the character,
yeah.
having the whole overprotective helicopter parent.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same
Yeah.
time, it was like, this girl needs a break.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff where you get the point and and like you understand why it's there, but it every after a while it is just like, is do we need that anymore? Like you've made the point. Let's continue on.
Yeah, I think I put down here like her mother like babies her, like her whole bedroom
Oh
is all
yeah,
painted pink with the stuffed animals, like
yeah. Her
you would for a
mum
5-year-old, but she's
babies
28.
her considerably. Like her mum doesn't let her grow up. Essentially,
No.
she's just like this is like the world, this is the life that you're gonna live because I'm gonna tell you to. And it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, a bit much, and it sort of does ring true rather to some, like because this is like because there are some kids and like people sort of at this point who and their lives are somewhat similar to this, not to this extreme, of course, but they do have lives which are sort of
At least
like
you
similar
hope
to
it's
this.
not to this extreme.
You would, yeah, that's the hope that it's like it's not this bad, but like who knows, it could be this bad, and that's not good.
Yeah, that whole thing, the mum was always there, and then she was always
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I think there was one scene where she's she's 28 and she's gone out to have a couple drinks with a
yes,
friend, and she's come
she's
home, and then her mum started yelling at her. I'm like, she is an adult.
yeah,
She can have a couple drinks and be fine.
yeah, exactly. It is kind of like, man, just because like it must suck having to live with a parent who does that, who isn't doesn't trust you enough to do something and just sort
But
of
also,
monitors everything
she's
you
an
do.
adult. She could
Yeah,
move out.
exactly. That is true. I guess it depends, like how much a ballet dancer is paid, per like how much they're paid. I guess,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
it is just like, yeah, like get it. Can we just move on from this point? Because it's just like it's a bit much and I'm kind of done.
I feel like that was true for a lot of things in this movie.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, we got the point. Move
yeah.
on.
Mm. So I'm just seeing what other notes I made. So I made a note where I basically was just like, I've got after this film like more respect for ballet dancers than I did before because it seems really hard to like
Oh
do
yeah, I
this.
know a few. Like I said earlier, I danced for a few years. I never
Yeah.
got to the point of like point shoes and
Mm,
semi-professional ballet. I did
yeah.
a solid 6 months of ballet lessons.
Yeah. It's like,
I was more of hip
man.
hop and contemporary sort of thing.
Yeah.
But no, ballet is tough. It is very tough.
Yeah. It is just like, man, this cannot be good. Especially because I was just thinking as I was watching, it's like, man, how many like ballet dancers have like screwed up feet after they're done, like when they retire?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
it's got
most
to
if
be
not all.
pretty. It's got to be like pretty bad because they've got to get like really like up there on their feet and they've got to be spinning and doing all these crazy
Yeah,
things and
they
it's
do
just
that. They even wear like protective things on their toes, and it's still not
Yeah,
enough
that
because
was
most, if not all of them, their feet are screwed
yeah, that was what
pretty
she
much.
was putting. What Natalie Portman's character was wrapping around her feet, right? Like protective.
I think she was taping her toes and then also putting like a, I think they're called toe pads. I could be
Oh,
wrong.
okay, yeah,
They put extra things in, then put the stockings on, then put the shoes on,
yeah,
and it's still quite painful.
yeah. It
So,
cannot be fun.
no.
I mean, dancing in general is relatively hard, but this is like the most extreme version of it, arguably.
The most extreme version of like
Of
ballet contemporary side of things anyway.
yeah, it just doesn't like because I couldn't do it, and I don't really think I know anyone who could do it because like I think after a few lessons I'd just be hurting, and I just couldn't be forced to care anymore to actually try and put the effort in to do it properly because it would just be like too hard.
Yeah, I know a few people who got to semi-professional and some even professional level ballet.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
and they're like, it's a lot of rehearsing. It's a lot. We don't have any free time,
Yeah. And this film
and
really
it's tough.
shows that sort of aspect of it too, like how much
Yeah,
time they spend.
it's a full-time job, like professional dancing.
Yeah.
Like
It's
at that level that they were doing is that's their full-time job.
yeah, it was very much like cuz a lot of the time, a lot of the film is Natalie Portman. There's a scene where she's practicing her dancing and like the piano guy is gone, like cuz he's playing the piano and then he just leaves and she's still practicing.
I thought that I have a note about that scene. I put
Mhm.
that scene was hilarious. He's just he stops playing. She's like, "Well, I'm still going." He's like, "I have a life," and walks out.
Yeah. I can't
That
blame
was
him
the
too
look.
because he must have been there for like a decent portion of time to be like, man,
Yeah,
because especially because she's still doing it too. Because like, and I get like, I feel like, depending on what it is, of course, I feel like if at that point I just be like, man, I mean, maybe I just don't have the. I mean, it depends, of course, but maybe I just wouldn't have the. I just sort of lose interest and I'd be like, I'm done with this. I'm not like he keeps telling me
yeah.
I'm not good enough. I'll just stop.
Maybe I'm not good enough and walk out.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
mean,
I'd probably do.
yeah, and I mean, I know that's like you're like you shouldn't necessarily do that, but I feel like there's got to be people who at a certain point are just like, I am done with this. This is causing
I've
too
also,
much pain, and it's just not
yeah,
working.
because when I used to dance, I even got to that point where I'm just like, nope, I'm done.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that is like a few people, they've been like, I've been doing this for 15 years. I'm done.
Yeah, I can't blame them.
I'm not going to be professional. What's the point?
Yeah, it does seem like man, you know, and especially because if you do it so often, you're just going to be sort of left with a sort of feeling of, you know,
Almost defeat.
yeah, because you've been doing this thing for so long, and it's just not getting better, and it's just not working, and you're just like, I'm just done. Like at a certain point, it feels like people would give up and just be like, I cannot do this anymore. Everything is over. I'm just gonna stop. Mm. But it is
That
like,
scene though with the pianist was that little bit of comic relief
yeah,
that I needed
this film
during this
has
movie.
this film really is very dark. There's very little actually positive stuff. Like I'm trying to think what actually good things happen in this film that I can like think of.
Although I think it was bad in that one scene where they do go out, that Mila Kunis's character
Hmm.
spiked the drink.
Yeah,
I thought that was bad, but
that's
the whole
jumping
them
out a little
going
bit,
out,
but I guess we'll just talk about it now. Yeah, that was very interesting. I was like, okay, is she like? I don't. That's a interesting thing to do to a friend, arguably, or at least someone you
yeah,
know relatively well. You're just like, you're just gonna put a little thing in their drink, and you're
yeah,
just
I
that's like,
I thought that was a bit odd, but the whole them at least going out for drinks
yeah,
concept
mm,
was good.
yeah,
Get her out of the house, get her to be a little more normal and
yeah,
social, but the
exactly.
whole spiking the drink thing kind of ruined it for me.
Yeah, I
Like,
was
damn,
like,
this is going so well. It's being so
yeah,
normal for a second.
it's just like. okay, so you've just done that. And I'm just like, this isn't gonna go well. Something bad is gonna happen, and then that leads to the scene with the two of them together, which is very interesting, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just this film's got a lot of stuff that it's very like you don't know what you don't necessarily want to touch on because it's like this is a bit much, isn't it? It's a bit awkward to put simply.
Yeah.
So the film, sort of like a running through line for the film is Natalie Portman's character keeps seeing visions of herself in like other people. So,
Yeah.
so there's a scene where she's like walking down like an alley. Well, it's not an alley, like a walkway, and she sees a woman coming towards her who looks like her, and then she looks back, and it's not her.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the first one where you see that.
Yeah,
It's like on an overpass
yeah,
sort of thing,
yeah. And so then
that scene.
yeah, it's very interesting. And there's multiple situations where that happens. There's a scene where she's like in the rehearsal studio, and the Mila Kunis character's face looks like hers, and as she walks in the light, it's like, oh, it's just her. She just is seeing these things because she's going a bit mental.
Going a bit nuts.
Yeah, and she's just like seeing things that aren't happening, and I was like, because I thought before the twist happened, I thought it was a thing where they were the same character, where Mila Kunis and Natalie Portman were the
Like a
same.
similar thing to Fight Club?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I figured it was. I thought it was like, oh, that's
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
yeah. It was
For a little
it
while.
was
Like, oh, is this
very
like a yeah, I thought, oh, is this like a similar thing to Fight Club where they end up if you haven't seen Fight Club, sorry about this in advance, where they end up being the same person.
yeah.
But
I mean, you probably know the twist of Fight Club anyway. Like everyone knows what it is. I would assume.
I didn't until I watched it.
There are like the handful of people who haven't seen it, but I could just skip ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's lots of visions. There's a scene where she's in the bath, having some time to herself.
Yeah.
And
Having
then
some alone time.
yeah, and then looks up and see like her face, and then she jumps up, and it's like, so she really is just seeing things. Like it's not like
And
her
then there's
mind
the
is sort
whole
of deteriorating,
yeah. Yeah. Then there's
deteriorating
also
a
that
bit.
scene where they what you said for the whole Mila Kunis, Natalie Portman, you know,
Mm,
getting
scene.
together sequence.
Mm,
That
yeah,
happens.
that does happen.
And then it turns into her face. So I'm like, hang on,
Mm,
is did that actually happen?
yeah,
Or was this like an illusion? I'm
and
very
then it is
confused.
revealed that I think it's revealed anyway that she was with a guy. Actually, if I recall, if I understood what was said right, it was a guy she was with. But for
I think
some,
that's what's implied,
it is yeah. But she thinks it's Mila Kunis and then herself. It's
which
very
is
weird.
bizarre.
It's very interesting. Very interesting. This is
That's one way to have a sexual awakening, I guess.
yeah. Or you can just have your ballet teacher force himself on you. That also
Or that,
does
I guess.
too. That's the less
Uh,
preferable way though, because it's a crime.
yes.
So
Yeah, it's a bit criminal.
yeah. So there's I think because we've sort of been jumping around
Yeah.
because
If you thought this was going to be one where we talk start to finish, I apologize. I've
yeah
kind
I
of just
think I mean we did say we were going to
ADHD
do that
brain
and
has gone
then
from point to point.
yeah. So earlier in so there's a scene where the Winona Ryder character is the former like main Swan. She's the Swan Queen.
Yes.
Queen, right? She's the main one, basically.
A
She's the
former
star.
muse
Yeah,
of the director.
yeah.
That's
She is.
that's one way to put it.
Yes, yeah. She's the former star of this performance, and then she is let go because for reasons. And so there's a scene
I
at
I think they imply that it's to do with her age
yeah,
because
a
your
bit
ballet
older.
career doesn't last forever. Once you get to
Yeah, exactly.
your 30s, your 40s, you're gone
Yeah,
because injuries, other things.
yeah,
But I think in this case, it's implied like, oh, it's too old for the director.
yeah,
Director's not
exactly.
interested anymore. Off you go.
Yeah.
Which is kind of really gross when you think about it.
Yeah. So
Mm.
the is the scene where they're at a party, like a fancy dinner party,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
and then she gets upset and she starts, hurling abuse. She insults Natalie Portman with some very choice words that are very harsh and a tad unnecessary, to be honest.
yeah.
Slightly
Yeah.
accurate, but like not
Yeah.
as like she did have a
Like, there's
thing
another
with
way you
him,
could word it,
but she
surely.
didn't do like what she said, and
Yeah.
so she sort of loses it, gets hit by a car, and it's pretty much said that she did it to herself,
Yeah.
pretty
It's
much.
kind of it is implied that way. That it's never explicitly
Mm.
said, but
Yeah, I
it's
think you
implied.
hear someone say like, "Oh, I think she did this or something," but there's no like definitive answer. We just know she got hit by a car and is in the hospital, and so we see her in the hospital, unconscious, which just
Yeah.
makes sense. And then we very much leave her character behind for quite a while. We don't see her again until like closer towards the end, when
Yeah, that's
the
right. And
yeah
there's quite a graphic scene.
yeah
Is the next one she's in.
yeah. So earlier in the film, Natalie Portman was taking. We keep saying the actress's name because I mean because I just can't be bothered. It's just easier to say that, honestly.
Yeah, I think the character's name is Nina, but
Yeah, I've got to note that it's Nina, but you know,
Natalie Portman's
Natalie
character is
Portman.
fine.
Yeah, so she took some stuff from her so she would like feel like she's the same part, because
Which
that's just
that's
how.
definitely how it works.
Yeah, and so then she goes back to drop her stuff off, and then Winona Ryder gets a bit upset and starts taking. I forgot what is it a fork or is it like something else?
Like a knife thing, isn't it?
It's like it's a stabbing object that can
Yes.
pierce skin.
I'm pretty sure it's like a knife.
I
But
wasn't I couldn't really make out what it was because it was just so fast, and then she
yeah, there's a lot
starts,
going on. It was just like, oh gosh, okay, all
especially
right.
because it just comes out of nowhere too. Like it feels a bit like I felt like it's another one of those things which like you're just doing that because you want to, not because and I could sort of understand where it's coming from, but it also feels like you just wanted to have something violent happen because this one was very like I don't want to say mundane, but there's not a lot of violence. It's very much just like, well, I mean that kind of violence. There's other kinds of
Yeah, there's
violence.
not like stabbing violence, but like sexual assault
Yeah,
happens.
there's a kind. There's
Not
I mean
too
there's some
frequently.
yeah, and there is some abusive stuff that happens with the mum,
Yeah, true.
but I didn't expect her to just start stabbing herself in the face
Yeah, that was the
repeatedly.
scene I mentioned earlier where I had to
Yeah,
watch it from between my fingers because
yeah,
I'm like, is it over?
yeah. It's that kind of violence that's like a bit like because it I don't know, just the sound it makes and just the blood and just the screaming and all this. I'm like,
Yeah,
that's a bit
the whole
far.
nature of it all was
Mm,
very intense. There was a
yeah.
lot going on.
And then she sees her face morphed into hers, and I don't really think we get like a definitive answer to what happens with her. I think it's fair enough to assume that I mean, she's definitely not in a good place, whether she lives or not. She's not in a good place. It doesn't go
No,
well.
it's not going to end well for her, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And so she so we don't come back to that, and then we basically get to the final scene. Well, actually, there's some stuff when Nat. Actually, so like that's arguably the end of the second act, and then the rest that happens after that is the third act, arguably. And so Natalie Portman starts becoming a bird.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, a
yeah.
swan. And
Which
I know
was
it's
which was
not real.
bizarre.
It's
No,
yeah, it's very like I didn't expect this to happen. I figured that she'd start going a little crazy, and she's trying to. There's a bit where she's trying to close her door, and her mum's hand is in the way, and she just slams it on her mum's hand, and
so painful.
it's like oh, and it's like making like cracking noises, and she's like screaming in pain. It's like stop. You were like again, it's that kind of violence. So like
It's
that's
like
a bit too real. Like
it's like your mum is awful, but like stop,
yeah.
please.
And I don't know why her. I mean, I guess because it depends on how fast the door is moving. Why couldn't she just like it hits once and then she moves her hand away? Because it stays there for a good few hits, like three
Yeah,
times it gets hit before it moves away.
yeah. Normally it gets hit once, and your natural response is to pull it away.
Yeah, but yeah, that felt a bit weird. It's like it's hit. Okay, so this is the point where you move it away. Oh, it's gonna stay, and a third time, and then they pull it. She pulls it away. But like the last one is like it's almost gone. There's like just like some fingers there that get crushed. It's like oh, hit like get like I don't know something about getting my hand crushed on a door is really
No,
like
thank you. No,
bad.
thank you.
Like any kind of door, I'm just like because I like hands are necessary. I do not
Yes.
want my hands to be gone. So it's just like every time they get and it's just I will say the sound design is very well done. Like it sounds very like painful and realistic. It's not just like, sort of it feels like they actually I mean, I know they
Slammed
didn't
a
actually
hand.
do it, but like it sounds like that could have been a possibility because it sounds real.
Sounds like there's a hand being slammed in the door.
Yeah. So then Natalie Portman starts becoming a bird. Her eyes are changing color. Her legs bend backwards, which again, that's just
Yeah,
a bit. And then she starts growing feathers, and then she's like wobbling, and she falls, and she smashes her head on like the end of her bed post or whatever. Like, ow, that's not good. And
yeah.
then she wakes up sometime later. She's like very upset at her mum because her mum didn't wake her up to tell her to go to the thing. Which, to be fair, at this point is a pretty reasonable response, honestly. Like, because she's been going, because she was like so excited to get this because it's, because earlier in the film she gets the part and her mum's like so excited and like, I'm so proud of you, and now she's like, no, you shouldn't go to that. It's like doing stuff to you. Your mind is like going a bit mental.
Like something's really not right here.
Yeah,
Which I think is the first and only rational response her mother has for the
yeah,
entire movie.
yeah,
Like a
pretty much.
normal reaction.
Yeah, and so then she leaves. She gets there. She's nearly late, but they haven't started yet. And and she gets upset because like Mila Kunis is like gonna take a spot because they've been sort of because she was like the backup, the alternate, just in case something happened, and she's not pleased about that. And
Well, that's
then
what an alternate is for. If you
yeah,
get sick or injured, they're there to replace you.
exactly.
That
But
is literally their purpose.
in this case, it's like, well, she doesn't want that to be an alternate. She's like, I am the one. I am the black swan. I am the white swan. No one else. I am the main. This is my story, and like no one else will take this
Gosh,
from me.
it
And
reminds me of a scene. I've watched too much Glee in my lifetime. It reminds me of Rachel from the main character from Glee when she's
oh god,
in season 5, when she's gets this part in this musical, and
mm,
it's like you need to find an understudy. But then
oh
her old like high school friend bully shows up, and it's like not her,
yeah,
anyone but her. It
yeah,
reminds me of that.
yeah. And that's actually pretty. That's fair enough because she does have like that same response. She's like, oh, not her. Like anybody but her. And then she starts becoming like changing and starts getting ready to do this and doing the makeup and everything. And
Just probably doing what the director told her to do.
mm, mm,
Just doing what she's told, not
yeah.
doing anything malicious.
Oh, I was talking about Natalie Portman, but that is also true.
Okay.
That they were both like that. She's just like that. Mila Kunis does nothing wrong in this film. She does
No,
absolutely nothing.
except
She
for spiking the drink. That was
except for
bad.
that. That's the one bit where it's like, okay, that's the one bad thing you did. But other than that, like everything's fine. So then they start doing this performance. Natalie Portman falls, messes up considerably, and I just realized that it's not that elaborate costuming. Like for the guys, they're just wearing like one suit, like these just like suits. That's like just one thing, and that's it. There's no like
One,
other
like a
costume to it.
unitard.
Yeah, it's just
A
white.
lot of male ballet costumes are like that.
Yeah,
They're just like a unitard.
yeah. Except
So,
for the guy who plays like I forgot what he is, but he's like the monster, like that creepy evil
oh
demon
yeah,
looking thing.
the
But
demon looking thing.
yeah. But besides that, like all the guy that like is holding up Natalie Portman is just like a white unitard, and that's it. And so
Where
then,
she's like panicking and that they've messed it up, but ultimately he dropped her.
yeah, like he needs to like she was moving a little bit, and she was like not being the most stable, but it's like surely he should be able to hold her, right? Like how much is she moving that he cannot hold her? There's like
He wasn't
I would
moving that
assume
much, surely.
I was like, this is a relatively fit guy. I assume he's
Oh, they're
she
very,
can't,
very fit men.
yeah, because you know you have to hold up however much the ballet dancers weigh for probably extended periods of time.
Most of them aren't very heavy, but
Mm.
it's still the whole holding them for a
But
while.
still, your arms will get sore after a while.
Yeah.
Still, no matter how heavy, holding something up is gonna cause you to get tired a little bit. So, yeah, the scene ends. The guy gets all upset, and all the other ballet dancers like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And it's so weird because earlier in the film they're very like bitchy towards each other. Well, some of them are. Like it depends, of course. But some of them they're not the
That's
nicest.
dances for you.
Yeah, and it's really weird. And so then Natalie Portman sees Mila Kunis and that guy, and they're getting a little bit
They're
close.
they're
Is
getting
the
it on.
best. Yeah, and I'm like, this isn't the place to do it, especially because like I don't like. Is that gonna be how noticeable is that gonna be? Like,
They were basically side stage.
yeah, exactly. But
So it's
still,
just
like,
like,
if
oh,
he goes
God.
out there after that, it's like, you know, who knows what might happen. So then they meet up in Natalie Portman's room, and she's saying Mila Kunis getting ready to replace her, and in her mind, it does make sense that she would see this, considering she did mess up, and some people did get upset at her, and then they start fighting.
Mhm.
I say fighting very loosely. It's more like a shoving match, really.
Yeah.
And then she pushes her into a window,
I thought it was the
or
mirror.
it's a mirror. Why'd I say window? It is a mirror to I guess because mirrors is a common theme throughout this entire film that mirrors are everywhere, and so then they push her into that, and then she sees herself choking her, and then grabs a piece of glass and then just stabs her.
Yeah.
And like
That was just like, okay,
I was like,
all right.
oh. And then I think it was at this point I was like, oh wait, that's what I remembered what like the big reveal was. I was like, oh, that's right. It's not this, is it? She
See, I didn't know about the whole big reveal plot twist
Yeah.
sort of thing. So I'm just like, what the hell have you done?
Yeah.
You've just stabbed someone.
And it's
What are you
like
doing?
in that moment, for a brief second, you could be like, okay, she was getting choked, but it's like
Still,
still
maybe
a
don't
stabbing.
stab people.
Like maybe there's something else you could do to get her off you that doesn't involve killing her.
Yeah. There are
And
many
then
other options that don't involve death.
yeah, and as she stabs her eyes become like, is it or not? It's a very like I don't know what the color of her eyes become. It's like a very like sort of orangey, but like a
Yeah, it's like a
bit
red orange color.
yeah. And then she says like, "This is my part" or anything, and like at that bit I was like, "Oh, this is good. She's really good at this whole acting thing." And then she realizes what she's done, and she's like, "Oh no, I have just killed someone." So
That's someone.
yeah,
Yes.
and then so what she
Watch
does,
the movie. Just watch the movie to
yeah,
find out that bit.
yeah. Wait, which bit?
The plot twist.
Oh, oh, we're not gonna give that away. All right, that's
Are
fine.
we?
Well, I mean, we could preface like this is we're gonna give away what the thing is. Skip ahead or stop listening if you don't want to know.
Oh, you kind of just made it sound like we weren't giving it away, so I didn't.
Oh, I wasn't gonna give it away yet. I was gonna give it away, talk about it when we got to it because we still got a little bit beforehand before we get
Good
to
point.
it.
You lot can wait and find out.
Yeah. So then she just takes the body and just dumps it in the bathroom, but
Yeah.
there's a pool of blood just like streaming out, and so she just takes a towel and just like lays it against the door, and it's like that'll be good, right? And also all that broken glass just like sweep it under a rug or something, and
I was
just leave it
thinking that,
there.
and I'm like, people will keep bleeding, so they will see the blood.
Yeah, it's gonna seep through eventually. And I was just like, I guess though it depends. Like, how many people will go into her room?
True.
Because like, well, Tomas comes. I don't know the actor's name, so I have to say the character's name for him. So he comes over. He doesn't, because I think that's before she puts the. Oh, is it before or is that later on? I'm trying to remember. There's a bit where he comes over and he's talking to her. I think it's after actually, where the bit where she's the Black Swan, which we'll get to. Yeah, I think it's after that actually. Never mind. I was wrong. There is a bit where he comes by later after her performance of the Black Swan. Because I thought it was then and she hadn't put the towel yet. And so and I was like, would he not have noticed the blood? But it's later on. So the towel's down and she's just got to leave the dead body there. And I'm like, I think you could surely make this look like an accident, right? Like if you're clever enough, you can make it look, like something might have happened. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I guess you're just like, I've just killed a person. Oh no. And you just sort of panic and just like.
What do I do?
Yeah. So then she starts getting ready and she does the performance as the Black Swan. And like, I like that the costumes are very well made for this. And I like that it's just the same costume, just in different colors. Because that's the whole point of the thing. Is like there's the same thing, just one's white and one's black. The
Oh,
duality.
yes, you got the Black Swan and the White Swan.
Yeah, and so then she's doing the final performance. She is doing great. There's a bit where like I forgot what it is exactly, but she looks like directly into camera, and I think her eyes are starting to like change color like as she gets like towards the camera, and she's like looking into it. Her eyes are becoming more of the bird color that she
Yeah, I
gets
think I
later
remember
on.
watching that going, oh, okay, all right.
And then
Oh.
she does the final bit of the performance, and as she's doing this and as she's spinning and spinning, she starts creating feathers and is becoming a swan. And then like the final bit is like she bows and then she like leans back, like her arms out, and you can just see like her arms are now wings and her body is covered in feathers. And it's a
Yeah.
very impactful scene. It's like, and it's very well shot and acted and directed and all that. It's
I was about
really
to say, it was very well done too, because the feathers don't look too unrealistic.
yeah. It looks like it looks like
legit.
natural feathers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite bit of the entire film. Just her going and it just goes and as she spins, there's more feathers and there's like you can see there's ones that are like flying off her, even though they're not real. So it's a bit interesting of a choice, but it keeps happening and happening, and then she finishes, and then everyone's like, oh, this is great, and and it cuts back to her, and the feathers are not there because it's not real, obviously.
Yeah.
And she's just like, she's so excited and elated and all this, and everyone's like, oh, you did great, and she's just like super happy. And then she has to go back to her room.
And face what she did before.
Yeah, where there is a dead body.
Mm.
Or so she
It's
thinks.
like, yeah, that thing.
Yeah. And then she gets back, she's just like, oh. And she's just like thinking of what to do, and she's getting ready for the final performance. And then there's a knock on the door. And
Oh, yeah. This bit.
she answers it. Do you want to talk about this, or do you want me to?
Yeah, you can talk about it if you want to.
So,
It's your podcast. I'll let you take the floor.
yeah, so spoilers. I mean, we've been talking about the film in depth,
Spoiler alert.
but just and I have made this clear in previous episodes that everything will be spoilers. So just don't listen to this if you haven't seen it, or you could listen to it if you just don't care enough. That's fine. So
You
then
plan not to watch it. That's fair.
that is also fine as well. So then she opens the door, and Mila Kunis is there, and she's like, that's a bit interesting. And she's like,
oh, sorry, I was out of line.
Yeah.
It's all good. You were
Yeah.
great out there. And then she's like, wait, weren't you just over there?
yeah.
Huh?
And then she leaves, and she pulls the towel away, and there's no blood because it didn't happen. And then we find out that she stabbed herself.
So she had a hallucination
Yes. And I
and has
think
stabbed herself.
I think it's very interesting because I think if they had shown it happening, like her stabbing herself, it would have looked really silly and like, ooh, that's a bit weird, isn't it? But the fact that we don't works. Like they're just like, because we know that she stabbed herself, and that's all that we need. We don't need to see it happening because
Yeah. Like I said, well, I've talked about Fight Club too many times because similar but different premises. The whole
not can't
They're not similar.
there's
'Cause
some similarities, I guess you could say.
They're like fighting each other in Fight Club, for
Yeah.
reference.
Yeah.
But he ends up just punching himself.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that is sort of the thing of like
So-
he's just fighting himself in that, but in this, she stabbed herself. But I mean, that is a much bigger part of that film. She doesn't,
Yeah.
keep injuring herself. It
No.
only happens this one time.
Although the mum does mention about her scratching her skin, and she has scratches.
Oh yeah,
her
I
back.
forgot about that. She is scratching a lot, and that actually leads to the scene where she becomes a bird for the first time, and she pulls like a little like sprouting feather, and it's really
Yeah.
like a bit gross, to be honest.
Yeah. It's a bit
And then
graphic and gross.
yeah, that's a very good through line, and because it doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's like, oh, she's been scratching this entire time, and then now it's a wing, and there's feathers. Well, it's not a wing; it's feathers, but sprouting out. And it's like, it's
Yeah.
seeing these things. And so,
And I think she pulls the feather out, and then the legs snap, and the
and
legs
then
snap.
the legs snap, and it's like, that's a bit gross. There's some really
Yeah.
like uncomfortably gross stuff in this.
Yeah, like more than I was expecting for a movie about ballet.
Yeah, I didn't expect this, honestly. Like, I knew some stuff. I was like, yeah, there's gonna be kind of some messed up stuff, but I didn't think it would be like this bad. I was like, ooh,
Yeah.
that's a bit much, isn't it? So
It's like there's a lot that happens
yeah,
in this movie.
yeah, So
It's definitely not your light-hearted Sunday afternoon affair.
yeah, absolutely. It's just like you need to be in the mood to watch this.
He's like, you need to be after something a bit heavier and a bit dark.
Yeah. And so she has realized that she stabbed herself and that she is bleeding out. And at this point, it's like, I can see how nobody would notice because it's like it's black and this blends in a bit more. But then
Yeah.
when she puts on the white Swan outfit, it's like red on white is very noticeable. Like, I would have.
Like,
Like,
It's
isn't that?
like before she got on stage, you could see it. So how did nobody else
Yeah,
notice
like
it?
even people further back could probably tell, like, there's some like that's something on her. It's a bit. That's not white. That's a bit different. I mean, and like people in like the front row should be able to be like, oh, she's got something red on her. That doesn't look good. And I would
Just want to
assume
know
the.
how did the director, who would have been watching the whole thing from the side stage, not notice it?
Mm, I guess like you could sort of hand wave it off, being like they were so enthralled by the performance they just weren't noticing, and they were sort of watching this, and they weren't really paying attention to the smaller details. They were sort of looking at the thing as a whole. But I mean, maybe that's a way you could explain it, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, she does the ending
she
sequence as the
does,
White Swan,
yeah, which ends with her jumping off a. I mean,
like
it's
the
meant to be like
platform
a
onto.
platform onto a.
It's basically like a
It's a
mattress,
mattress,
but I
yeah.
think
It's a
they're a bit thicker.
safety, yeah,
It's a safety thing.
yeah. And we see her practicing on it a little bit earlier in the film, and so she gets up there, she does her final performance, does the final pose, and jumps, and it like goes into like slow motion, and it's all ethereal, and she lands, and the performance is done, and there's just like applauding from everyone, and they're all so happy, and all the performers are happy, and the director is happy, and everybody's happy,
They
and
all rush
then
over and say, "You were wonderful,
yeah,
yay!"
and
Without
then
noticing she's bleeding out.
yeah, until they're like all this, and then I think it was the Mila Kunis who was like, she like notices the blood and like makes a loud noise, and everyone's like looking, and they all scramble off to go find someone or something to help, and the director's like holding the wound so it like to stop the bleeding as best he can, because
Although for as long as it was probably bleeding for, she's bled out
yeah.
for sure.
So I'm just gonna look for the final line. Well, she basically says, so she's
It was
all about
something like it was all about perfection.
yeah,
So it was something
that's
along the
what
lines of it was
she
perfect or something.
was up, because that's the whole point, is that she's striving for this perfection to become the best, you know white/black swan. And it's like she's very much, that's what she's been striving for the entire film, is
Yes.
to be the best. And I found the line here, if you don't mind me reading it.
Oh
So
no, go ahead.
she
I don't
says,
know what it is.
she says about the performance that the line is, "I felt it perfect. It was perfect." And she doesn't care that she's dying. She's like, that was perfection. This is all that I wanted, and
Well, it doesn't
more.
actually say that she dies. It kind of just
No,
fades
it
to a white
fades
screen.
to black, and so then there is the interpretation of, do you think she dies or not? Like, it's like, because I know there are people who are like, she dies, and there's some people like she doesn't die, and it's like, I think whether she dies or not, she is content in that moment. It was like it was a perfect performance for her. Everyone loved it. Everything is great. She is happy. So to her, it doesn't matter if she lives or dies, because the performance was perfect and everything she wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we fade to white, and then the credits roll.
It was very like almost not quite as abrupt of an ending as some movies I've seen, where it's
Yeah,
just like scene, end of movie.
yeah,
I was like, what? This at
yeah.
least had like an ending.
It has closure to
Yes.
Natalie Portman's character. She got what she was after, everything was how she wanted it to be, and then we end on a fade out, as everything to her in that moment is perfect. And,
Yeah. There's at
So,
least an ending. I can't
yeah,
stand movies that just leave you on like, well, I
yeah,
get cliffhangers, but like
yeah,
halfway through a scene, it's like, what are you doing? Just add an extra 5 minutes. Come
yeah.
on.
Like, I mean, some people could argue that it doesn't necessarily have an ending, but I would argue it does. Like, her character arc, her character journey is complete. Everything is done. The story is wrapped up. She got what she wanted,
Yeah,
and
I
that's the
don't
end
know
of the
where
story.
else the movie would go from
Yeah,
there
exactly. And
without it
especially
feeling
because, like,
unfinished.
yeah,
especially because it's like it leaves you up to the interpretation. Does she die or does she not? You know, like it's just sort of doesn't matter if she lives or dies because that's not what the movie's about. The movie is about her getting that like perfect performance. It is a running theme throughout of
Yeah.
the director wanting her to be perfect and doing anything to get that with some very dubious means, and he's
Yes.
doing that, and she is striving for perfection and to be the best. And that's the whole point, and that's the story, and that's how it ends with her feeling elated with this perfection of a performance she's given.
She's finally hit perfection.
Yeah. And
She's like,
so,
I've done what I want to do. All is good.
yeah. And again, in those final few scenes, Natalie Portman gives a really good performance in it. In the final few scenes of the film, basically from like the moment she stabs or stabs who she thinks is Mila Kunis to like the end, like that chunk is like great. It's really good stuff. Gave a really good performance in it.
Yeah, I know a lot of other actresses would not have been able to pull that off.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. It definitely depends on who it is.
yeah.
So, are there any final sort of things you want to talk about?
I think we covered, because I have a 2-second memory, so I had to write dot points about the movie.
Yeah. Are
And
there
I
any
think we
notes that we
touched on
didn't touch on?
I think we touched on everything.
I'm just gonna look through my notes. I think we touched on most of it. There was some stuff we skirted around because, don't want to talk about that.
We don't want to trigger anyone.
Yeah.
We want this to be a happy place, a non-triggering environment as much as we can.
Yeah, throughout Nina, Natalie Portman's character has various visions, and there's a bit where she sees Lily's, who is the Mila Kunis character, back to become, well, because it's a Lily, hence her name, and then it becomes Swan wings. And, running theme of she just keeps seeing these visions of things that are clearly not happening, but she thinks they are. And it's very much set up and paid off in the film.
Yeah.
So, that seems to be it. Do you actually, before we wrap up and finish this, do you want to put a rating on the film out of 10?
I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it was an excellent film. Because I'm not normally a big fan of those like psychological thrillers that are really dark that make you think about stuff. I like to zone out and watch Disney movies. That's my thing.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of those kind of darker movies that I've actually really enjoyed, despite it being all kinds of messed up.
Yeah.
And I think most of it was well acted, well directed, well shot.
Yeah.
None of it made me want to pause it and do something else.
Yeah. It wasn't boring. It definitely wasn't boring.
No, gosh.
You can't say it's boring.
Definitely not.
There's at least something happening. Even if you don't like it, there is something happening. Even if it's very uncomfortable.
Yes. There's at least something always happening. It's not... I think I've watched a couple of movies. Maybe it was the most recent one I watched. I watched Avatar the other day, like the Blue People 3-hour-long Avatar movie.
That one, yeah.
And half of that just drags on for ages where nothing
Yeah.
happens. It's not that.
Yeah, this film, it moves at like a clip. It moves fast. There isn't like anything dull. Like it just keeps moving and the plot keeps progressing. And I'm going to agree with that and also give it an 8 out of 10. This is not as good as Aronofsky's other film I've seen, Requiem for a Dream, which we touched on a little bit. But
we briefly mentioned because I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I will have to go watch it now.
Yeah. That's another one where you need like some time to carve out and just to be like, you need to be in the mood for it.
Just watch it in the middle of the day and then go eat a sandwich and watch something funny on YouTube afterwards.
Yeah, that's pretty much what you should do with it. So, that is it for this week's episode. And thank you for coming on for this one again, for another episode.
No worries. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, there's a good chance I'll probably have you on for at least another one in the future at some point.
I'll be happy to come back.
Yeah, so...
as long as the people want me.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's everything. Thank you all for listening. I don't need to really plug anything because I plug it all the time. So, that's all. So, thank you all for listening. Yeah. And I will see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.